A South African writer, Sir Lawrence Vanderpost, grew up hearing stories of the Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert. He heard them from his nurse, Clara, and when he was older, he wanted to actually meet real Bushmen. So in the 1950s, he organized an expedition to the Kalahari Desert, and after weeks of hard going, he and his expedition finally came into contact with a small Bushman tribe. And they had about 30 men, women, and children. Now, he wanted to hear their stories, but whenever he asked them about them, they would change the subject. They were very kind and generous. They told him where to find water and game and roots and how to survive in the desert, but they just wouldn't tell him any of those famous stories he'd heard as a child. Realizing they probably didn't trust him enough to tell the stories, he decided to try to really live like they did and enter their world. So he went hunting with them. He and a few Bushmen went out at dawn and hunted all day, and at sundown they killed an eland, which is a large African antelope. And you know, just like the Native Americans on this continent, the Bushmen never killed an animal without thanking it for its sacrifice. So the next night they organized a special dance for it, and as they did, clouds began to form and thunder could be heard in the distance. Vanderpost noticed the approaching storm and that it seemed to fit with the preparations. He said it appeared as if the elements had decided that they too would take part in this ceremony of thanksgiving. And I'm sure that is what the Bushmen felt in their hearts. After they finished the eland dance, they began the fire dance, the greatest dance of them all, he says, which went on for 7 hours. The music increased in intensity, and the lead dancer acquired the power of healing. He approached the sick and worked with them, crying out like different animals and making strange gestures. At the climax of the ceremony, the storm was climaxing too. Vanderpost says, the deep booming of desert thunder joined with the singing, and in the surrounding veldt, the lions, feeling the excitement of the dance and the coming of the rain, began to roar, and the hyenas to wail, and the jackals to bark, and the owls to screech as never before. I felt as if the whole universe had come to a point in that moment. Never had I heard human voices go back so far in time, so deeply down into the pit of being. This, I thought, was the cry of longing, anguish, and desire of the first human on earth. And then the rain began to fall, and I can only say that I myself have never felt more dedicated and nearer to God than at that moment. And I stood there almost in tears, as one with revelation in a temple. The next day, the Bushmen began telling their stories. It was almost as if they were saying, if you want to hear our stories, you have to enter our world. You have to see life as we live it, so you can understand the stories we tell. In our own very small way, we are doing something similar right now. We're about to share our joys and sorrows, which are in effect our stories. And we don't tell them lightly, at least not the deep ones. We tell them with a certain level of trust that has been established with this particular tribe. And when we have entered each other's world, we can hear each other's stories, and when we have heard the stories, we enter even further into each other's world. So do you have any stories to share of joy or sorrow as we light a candle for each?
Okay, so we are going to do the offertory now, and I'd just like to read a little bit about the sharing of the plate for this month. At UCN, we have a tradition of sharing half our cash offering with an organization that fulfills our mission and is selected by our social justice committee. And this month, the recipient is the project Restoring Our Communities Milwaukee, referred to as Rock Milwaukee. The project's goals are to help end mass incarceration in our region, with its often brutal effects on those who are incarcerated, as well as on the families and their communities. Rock Milwaukee is a priority project of the statewide interfaith organization Wisdom, of which UCN is an active supporting member from Ozaukee County. Rock Milwaukee's goals are to prevent people from going to prison, to reform our current prison system, and to support the successful return to the community for all those who are released from incarceration. The project also seeks to decrease the use of solitary confinement and to end the inequalities of our current bail system, which keeps many people incarcerated without formal charges or trial only because they cannot afford to pay their bail. By supporting Rock Milwaukee, we are giving aid to one of the increasing number of organizations throughout the United States seeking to alleviate the injustice and damages of our current criminal justice system. Your donation will support this increasing national movement and benefit many individuals, their families, and their communities, including our own. Thank you for your generosity. Ushers, please come forward. For our prayer and meditation today, I have a poem from Rumi and then a prayer that follows. You were born with potential. You were born with goodness and trust. You were born with ideals and dreams. You were born with greatness. You were born with wings. You are not meant for crawling. So don't. You have wings. Learn to use them and fly. Spirit of life and love, we have gathered here in search of answers to hard questions. We have come in search of understanding, in search of community. We have come in search of hope and healing. Let this be a place not only of searching, but of discovery. Let this be a place of learning, not only of learning, but of wisdom. Let this be a place not only of meeting, but of connection. And let this be a place where healing fosters giving and hope fosters service. This is our prayer, that we may create here a circle of love, ever expanding, ever growing, as we seek to know you, the source of our being. Amen, and blessed be. Please join me in the hymn number 123, Spirit of Life.